Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts, number 407, Automating a Soundtrack. I'm Exterminator, and thank you for joining me again today. And this one is by Albert and Donian. Hopefully I pronounced their name somewhat correctly. And I will start off by saying this is a very technical article about music. So if you're into that, awesome, and you can definitely read the entire thing word for word. I'm not going to do that because I struggle to understand some of it, and also it would take me quite a while to actually read this out. So I have asked my friend Bard to give me a nice summary, which it did very nicely. So we're going to use a summary, but I am going to actually read small parts of it so we can kind of get the idea, and we'll listen to some samples. And then the main part of this is actually going to be the main part of my video is they do have a Q&A section at the bottom from stuff that was asked last week. So I definitely would stick around for that because we do get some questions answered that are going to be pretty important to know. So let's just start off here. So basically Factorio is getting some automated music. Now last week in 406, we went and took a look at, they showed us like just kind of more of the end result, more so than how things got there. But now we get to see how things get there. So basically they have a way to cover 5 hours, but also more than 5 hours using variable music tracks. So basically, with this, these tracks will change on every loop, providing more variety during your Factorio adventures, especially for those who sink hundreds of hours into the game. So that's nice that they, aren't just going to be infinitely repeating. Now, I don't personally know that I would want them to change drastically. I mean, I really liked the samples I heard last week, and if it's going to be very, very different than that, then that's maybe not great in my opinion, but we'll just continue down. So we have some bullet points here, but basically the music is built from smaller building blocks called samples, and these samples are grouped into layers, which can be simple, like random selection, or complex, like selecting samples based on what's playing in other layers. Right, so these two kind of directly interact. Now, multiple layers are grouped into sections. We can see down here, and the entire track is controlled by states and transitions. States determine which, basically determine which sections are playing and how layers within those sections behave. Transitions dictate how the track moves between states based on factors like elapsed time or specific samples finishing, right? So that's basically this whole section. They have these broken into bits, and then they're kind of combined in layers, and then that determines sections in the state, etc. So now that we know what variable tracks are made of, let's look at a couple examples of how a track gets composed, right? So we can come down, and these will actually just look through. So we start here, the grid for tempo alignment, and then we come here, and a layer can start with a specific sample, sample number 1, and then the base the base layer has 2 overlapping sublayers offset from each other. You can see there. And then samples are selected randomly. However, the same samples can't be repeated immediately. So we go 1, 3, 4, and then we come down here. And after 4, we then do 3 again because you can't do like 3, 3. So you can see other sublayers breaks immediate repetition. Sample 4 plays between repetition 3, the 3s. And then overlap offsets can be variable, either 1 or 2 time units for the base layer. And then we can kind of get out a fuller version here. More samples. Second layer starts playing with a delay, so that comes in later, and then another layer. And then overlap offsets are fixed to 1 time unit. More samples, even more samples. The melody layer has a single sublayer. So this gets quite complex. It kind of seems similar to like video editing. Obviously, probably different in quite a few ways and maybe even more complicated, but generally, it looks like a timeline when you're doing video editing. So we're just going to listen to some of this, not the whole 3 minutes, but so this is how an instance of the track might sound, recorded in-game using a work in progress version. And then just before we do that, they say the images are only an illustration and do not correspond to the recording. Here is an actual timeline. So this is the timeline of this. I believe these are irrelevant to what we're about to listen to. So we can kind of get the idea there. It is random, but it does kind of all blend together fairly well. Now, I did see a lot of feedback on the forums and Reddit that I think people seem to not like this track because there was like no actual consistency or repeating beat to it, and that kind of was jarring and it made things hard to concentrate. And I can kind of understand that. I'm just sitting here like staring randomly at a point on the screen while I listen to this, but if you're like actually trying to play the game and think, I could see how this could be kind of distracting, this particular one. So like I said before, I hope that they don't go too overboard with this. I don't think it sounded bad, but I do think that there's a fine line between having nice kind of varied music and then having things that are just super jarring and jumbled and really distracting. But so we can kind of just see, obviously we didn't listen to the whole thing, you definitely can, but I didn't want to take up 30% of the video with this. And then we move down to the second example, shows a track with only one section, but it overlaps itself when transitioning between states at fixed intervals. The section has 3 layers. There's also a chance to play in intermezzo if a specific sample played in the first layer. So we can just go back to the start. We can see here, first layer selected randomly, sample for second layer is selected based on the sample of first layer, and then we come back down, and then the sample for the third layer is selected based on sample of first as well, and then this comes in with a delay, and then these are based on the first layer again, and then we have this one coming in with even more of a delay. So, and this is how this one might sound. So I'm going to come back to the beginning here. Okay, there we go. So there's that one. That one I think sounds a little better in regards to not being as kind of jumbled up and distracting. I do like that one. It's actually it's very eerie. It reminds me of some like bits of like some of the Star Wars movies. I'm thinking maybe like the prequels or something. But this is good. I can see this. I'm curious what planet this may be tied to, or what when this type of thing might play. This is definitely very eerie. It doesn't really seem to fit like Novice, for example, but overall I think this one is pretty decent. So we come down and then we're going to hop into more summary here. So technical challenges. So the devs did of course face some technical challenges to be able to pull this off. So sample queuing. Smooth transitions between samples were crucial. The team built a custom queuing system to ensure samples play back to back without gaps, avoiding audio artifacts. Right. So this is all the nitty gritty details of that, but that's basically the summary of that section of this paragraph. And then fading samples. So basically, sharp transitions between samples could create clicks. The developers created a custom fade filter to smoothly transition between samples, eliminating those unwanted noises, right? And then we can just see here, so you can hear the clipping artifacts in this recording, which was taken using an older version. You might need to turn your volume up. Okay, well, it's up all the way, so. It's really, I don't know that you guys can hear it. I can barely hear it. That there's like kind of some clicking static at some points. So I do notice a difference personally. I'm not sure if you can through YouTube, but yeah, I do notice that doesn't sound too great. So then we come down to aligning layers. So all layers and some layers need to be in sync for the music to sound right. Since the game engine locks the audio device to avoid conflicts, the developers had to basically employ workarounds to ensure all layers start precisely at the same time, even if some begin playing silence initially, which is interesting. So yeah, they basically decided to make sure everything's aligns correctly. And after all of these technical challenges and stuff, they, I think, have a system that works. I just, again, like I said, I hope it doesn't go too overboard. But overall, I think this could be good because having more variety in the music and more than just the 5 hours, I think, will be nice. But there we go. So I tried to summarize the best I could. Hopefully it wasn't too boring, but now, my summary, I was reading just, I was literally just reading for part of it, the summary, but we're going to go down to the quality or the Q&A section. And this part is pretty important. So basically, which music plays when remotely viewing different services and when switching services? And I think this is probably one of the biggest questions people ask, including myself, because it is a worry that it might be super jarring. So each track is tied either to one planet or to a space platform. The surface you're currently looking at, whether you're in actual like regular view when controlling your character, or you're looking at the surface in remote view, that's what's used to select the appropriate music track. When switching between services, again, either with the character or with remote view, the music track is switched. Progress of the current track for each service is remembered. So when you switch back to the surface, basically that had the music interrupted by a switch, and the track will be resumed from the remembered place instead of restarting a new track. And then so basically this means that you have immediate feedback of switching services, including this music, without constantly stopping and restarting it. Currently, the switch between different services tracks happens immediately. However, this might change, and some kind of transition, for example, a short fade in and out, might be added depending on testing and feedback. So this is definitely something where I've seen some feedback, and I would give my own feedback. I think we really need a fade in and a fade out for this. This sounds, if it just starts immediately, this sounds incredibly jarring, because there are times, at least for me, a lot of times, where I will switch pretty quickly and pretty often, like especially and this is just on the current, with one planet. If there's 4 planets, multiple space platforms, like, I'm going to be switching back and forth all the time. Like, oh, what was made here? Oh, let me check this build. Oh, is this thing producing? Oh, I forgot something. What was I looking at again? And like, if you're just switching back and forth and the music is changing like immediately every single time, that sounds incredibly jarring. So I hope that some sort of fade in and fade out would be good. Maybe even somewhat of a slow one. So like, if you do a super quick switch, like if I just, 2 seconds look at my space platform and then close the view, like I wouldn't even hear music or something, because I just think that would be kind of weird to like have novice music playing, go to look at your platform and have like 1 second of a new track immediately start like blasting, and then just go back to novice and have the other one start again. It sounds really jarring like that. So I think a fade in of some sort would be nice, or maybe just like a fade in and some sort of delay, like a 2 or 3 second delay. So if you're just looking at something super quick, you maybe just don't even hear the music. But that's just my feedback. So I would love to hear what your thoughts are with this as well. Could the music be made more dynamic and react to the game context? So basically, to avoid more technical stuff last week, they weren't entirely accurate about how the music player wasn't able to recognize what was going on in the game state clearly and know something if it can react to the surface. However, it's the only variable from the game state the music player takes into account. The engine having these limitations doesn't mean doesn't mean it would be impossible to pass more information along into the music player. That's the easy part. The music itself would have to be composed with such a system in mind from the beginning. So years ago, they would have needed to have all these conditions well defined in advance so that Pezzer could compose in a way it would work all together. And that obviously is a little late for that. So it's probably not going to happen, essentially, to have it react more specifically to what you're doing. And then, can we have fine control over music? So there are no plans to add complex controls like custom playlists or per service settings. A simple mod can be created, though, if someone wants to do that, which I'm sure there will be a mod for that. And then simple controls are a different story. For 2.0, we have added options to bind a key to skip currently playing track. So this is really nice, so you just aren't feeling it. And then go back to the previously played track into pause, resume the music. So this is really nice. More keybinds. I'm going to need second keyboard or something here soon, but I think this is really nice because, there were some parts from last week that I really, really like immensely enjoyed, and I would love to just listen to those on repeat, maybe 2 or 3 times. And then there's some that maybe I would just like to skip. So this is great. Will the music play all the time? No. So it's going to be the same as it is now on point one. If you haven't noticed, there's basically randomized pauses between tracks. At most, we could just break the pause duration to fit better with the lengths of space tracks. This is subject to feedback from testing. So, yeah, I mean, currently in the game, that's how it works too. There's just sometimes where there's no music, and I think that's fine. And that's how it will be in 2.0. And then another question, which I had, and I think other people did, is will there be a soundtrack sold separately? And the answer is yes. Just like there is now, there will be a digital version of the soundtrack, which will be available for purchase, same as the base game soundtrack. Absolutely thrilled because, like I said, I really love some of that music. I would love just a soundtrack, and I will gladly support the devs in buying it as well. Even if I think actually I bought the original soundtrack and I've never even listened to the standalone soundtrack just to support them. I mean, it's super cheap and they deserve it. So, yeah, that's this week. Super technical, kind of nitty gritty, honestly, but congratulations and thank you if you stuck around. And we did get some good Q&A answered. It is interesting to see how, I'm not saying this is like completely useless stuff. It's not even remotely it's that like I just don't understand it at all. I'm so far away from what could possibly considered like a music aficionado, developer, musician, anything like that. So this is just so far over my head. But I think the end results hopefully will be great with this, and I'm super excited. I really have a feeling, and based on our pattern so far, next week is going to be a banger of our Friday Facts. I'm thinking, I hope I don't curse it, I think we might get a new planet reveal next week. So, I know the last couple of these were kind of technical behind the scenes stuff, but I think we're in for something really great hopefully next week. And yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you did enjoy. And, if you're excited for music and enjoy the technical stuff, definitely leave a thumbs up. And even if you didn't and still like the video or the Q&A, definitely leave a like. And if you're new, feel free to subscribe if you aren't already to keep up with all future content. And I'd love to hear your thoughts below. But until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.